I invite you to remain standing for a reading from the Gospel according to John this morning. And if you make your way to the Gospel as it's recorded in your bulletin, you'll be really close. The weird thing is that we've already shared most of this story, so I'm not really sure what happened with my record keeping. This is my doing, though. You can blame me. It's fine. But turn back a few verses. And I'm getting turned around again. I don't know why. Yes. But not John 11. What on earth have I done? John 10:11. Yes, thank you. What am I doing? Y'all, I need to sleep more. Thank you, Betty. The 10th chapter of John, starting with verse 11. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. When the hired hand sees the wolf coming, he leaves the sheep and runs away. That's because he isn't the shepherd. The sheep aren't really his. So the wolf attacks the sheep and scatters them. He's only a hired hand, and the sheep don't matter to him. I am the good shepherd. I know my own sheep, and they know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. I give up my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that don't belong to this sheep pen. I must lead them too. They will listen to my voice, and there will be one flock with one shepherd. This is why the Father loves me. I give up my life so that I can take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I give it up because I want to. I have the right to give it up, and I have the right to take it up again. I received this commandment from my Father. Friends, hear what the Spirit is saying to God's people. You may be seated. Let the words of my mouth and meditations of my heart be pleasing to you, Lord, my rock and my redeemer. How many of you all, I'm curious, memorized the 23rd Psalm as children? How many of y'all would admit to that? Quite a lot. That's a big chunk of us. That's more than a majority. Wait, more than a majority. That's not a thing. It's a supermajority. It would pass by a 2/3 vote. Is that what that means? I don't know. That's a lot. A lot of us became familiar with this psalm at a really early age. I didn't. I came into the church after that point at which most kids would have learned it. I was 10 years old when my family started actually attending church. We grew up in Wisconsin, just south of Milwaukee. And I think my parents never found a church that they were comfortable with. I don't know if they all seemed snooty or what. But when we moved to Maryville, and I can say that's a correct pronunciation if you're within the city limits or close to it. If you're back in the hills, then you came from Maryville. If you're from way outside of the town, you came from, well, you didn't come from there, but you heard about Maryville. When we moved there, we started attending church. And that was kind of after that point at which kids start memorizing verses from the Bible and memorizing things like this. And so when I was in my 20s, our pastor asked me, and it was specifically because I had long hair at the time. It was longer than Trinka's hair. And really fluffy. He asked me to carry a live sheep down the center aisle of our sanctuary speaking aloud the 23rd Psalm. And so it was at that point in my 20s that I had to memorize the 23rd Psalm. He assumed that I had done it years before, because for generations, this has been one of those psalms. It's been one of our go-to psalms for memorization. It's one of those keys to determine if you can memorize something. Maybe the preamble of the Constitution is another one of those. But it's a go-to, and maybe it's for that reason that this becomes one of our go-to psalms that are kind of our comfort places, those things that we go to when we need a hug with words. We need to feel something comfortable, something familiar. It's soul food. It can also become something that we can cheapen from time to time, which I'm afraid is a thing that with this holiday that we celebrate today, Mother's Day. This has very much become a Hallmark holiday. It's the kind of thing that we celebrate, and we want to recognize mothers, and we want to recognize those folks who have been mothers to us in various ways. And one of the dangers of doing so is we neglect folks who have been hurt by mothers. We neglect folks whose experience is negative concerning motherhood, who've lost children, who have never been able to be mothers, who have hazardous relationships with their own mothers. We need to recognize those. But we also, I think, need to recognize that something has transformed in our understanding of Mother's Day. It was in 1870 that Julia Ward Howe proposed that we begin a day of bringing mothers together, but it wasn't for us to take our mothers out to lunch after church, or for us to feed them breakfast in bed, or find cheesy cards for them. 1870 puts us in a very specific place in our history as a nation. It follows what people thought of as the very worst possible years in our nation's history. A war that was bloody and ugly beyond anyone's comprehension. Nothing could possibly be worse than what we went through in the Civil War. Well, it turns out there is not much of a limit to people's imagination for cruelty, because it got worse. But in 1870, responding to the violence and the bloodshed of the Civil War, Julia Ward Howe, who penned the hymn whose name is escaping me, the Battle Hymn of the Republic, again penned these words and shared them. Arise then, women of this day. Arise, all women who have hearts, whether your baptism be of water or of tears. Say firmly, we will not have questions answered by irrelevant agencies. Our husbands will not come to us reeking with carnage for caresses and applause. Our sons shall not be taken from us to unlearn all that we have been able to teach them of charity, mercy, and patience. We, the women of one country, will be too tender to those of another country to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs. From the voice of a devastated earth, a voice goes up with our own. It says, disarm. disarmed. The sword of murder is not the balance of justice. Blood does not wipe our dishonor, nor violence indicate possession. As men have often forsaken the plow and the anvil at the summons of war, let women now leave all that may be left of home for a great and earnest day of counsel. Let them meet first as women to bewail and commemorate the dead. Let them solemnly take counsel with each other as to the means whereby the great human family can live in peace, each bearing after its own time the sacred impress, not of Caesar, but of God. In the name of womanhood and humanity, I earnestly ask that a general Congress of women without limit of nationality may be appointed and held at some place deemed most convenient and the earliest period consistent with its objects, to promote the alliance of the different nationalities, the amicable settlement of international questions, the great and general interests of peace. It's the shepherd's duty to safeguard the sheep, to shelter them, to keep them safe from violence, safe from becoming lost, to keep them together as one flock. It seems like one of our greatest callings as parents is to try to hold the family together, and that's hard sometimes. Sometimes it's impossible. But I think our shepherd is calling us to reconcile with each other, to be at peace, to call to an end all those things that drive wedges between us, all those ways in which we separate in groups, those ways we cut human bonds. Jesus not only calls together all those people who at that time were of Israel, but remember, Jesus says, I have other sheep that don't belong to this sheep pen, and I must lead them too, and they will listen to my voice, and there will be one flock with one shepherd. If you listen to the public discourse today, friends, it would seem that there's more that divides us than can possibly unite us. But what I would say to you is that which does unite us is a stronger bond than anything has strength to divide us. We need to learn to listen to the voice of our shepherd. We need to learn to nurture each other together